Afternoon and welcome everyone to our second lockdown lunch. Just going to wait a couple more, maybe another 20 or 30 seconds to allow people to come in. In the interim, I've just put a poll out. Part of today is around market segmentation. So I'm keen to get some feedback from you on the areas of focus for your business. So if you could just fill it out in the interim, I'll come back to you shortly. Okay, yes, good afternoon, everyone. Just say welcome again from the shed. So hope you all had a very pleasant Easter. Got some chocolate under the belt. I have got a good session for you today, and I'll just get my screen going for you all. And as always, we have chat and Q&A. I've got Sandy and John with me in the background. One of the things we talked about last week was around market intelligence. So during the presentation, I am keen to get your feedback. And so we do have a function called raised hands. It's in the menu bar. And so when I prompt you, if anyone would like to share their comments, I can actually bring you in on audio. So we won't see your face or your office setup. We'll just hear your voice. Just think of it like talkback. Okay, we got here. I'll just keep that poll up for a few more seconds and. Right, okay, I'm assuming everyone can see the polling button. John and Sandy, if you can just help people out if they're struggling there. Great, I just want to, we'll get started. Great, so just a reiteration of what we're doing today. So looking at how we tackle the challenges in the current market, obviously cash flow uncertainty, thinking about how we deploy workforce in a market that could well be changed going forward, and just how we deal with the uncertainty in terms of the amount of work going forward and when that work could come online. So the focus for me in running these sessions is really to look at planning, so it's to help you to get ready for the new market and adapting quickly. Big part of that is through some market insights and then thinking specifically around specification. So I want to start off with just having a look at what we're seeing on EBOSS. So this is our web traffic, so a number of web sessions for the month of March, comparing this to February. Leading up to Covid-19, we were actually above our 2019 stats. And you can see through here, sorry, I've got a very sensitive mouse. Right, okay, through here, we're starting to get the last 28 days. This is the week of lockdown, and we can see the big issue here around transition and distractions. And this is the last week leading up to Easter. So we're about 3,200 sessions on the Tuesday of last week, and that came down to the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's understandable that that would be decreasing versus February, but what we are seeing is some confidence and still high levels of product inquiry and product search by architects. So it's given us some confidence that there's plenty of project work out there for us to focus on, projects that we need to get engaged with and follow through to specification and selection. Okay. Just want to again just reiterate some of the things from last week around setting the scene and preparation for restart. Asked you to do a bit of homework last week in identifying what are the key segments of the residential and commercial sector that you'll be focusing in on. And today I'd like to actually go through those segments and get some discussion going around how we believe they could be impacted by the current market. Then we can actually share some information around key projects. I'd also like to get some feedback if anyone's got any from insurers, and then finish with thinking about the next 7 days and what we need to be aware of. Again, we've got our Q&A open, we've got our chat line as well, and if at any point you would like to you'd like to speak, just raise your hand and I can bring you in. Great. So the homework from last week was asking you all to identify the types of residential and commercial work that gives you the highest percentage of gaining and holding specification. So we went through the different segments last week as part of the presentation, and my expectation is that you've gone through and identified which parts you want to focus in on. If we believe the market's going to be tighter going forward, it potentially could be harder to win work. We have got to work hard in the areas we have the best chance of being successful. So I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. If we've done that identification, how do we align our solutions with the targeted type of work? So this is, in the past, we might have said, hey, we've got a great product that suits commercial design. We now need to be thinking about how we can influence the architect by saying, this is a great solution to meet your client's needs for aged care facility or for tertiary education. And then let's reflect and put an architect's hat on. How do we present that information, and what level of confidence does that give us as a specifier to support and build that case for our project requirements? Okay, now in terms of focus, I'm just going to share the poll results with you now. Great. Okay, here are the results here. Now, first question, can I just get a show of hands from someone that they can actually see the poll results? Or a thumbs up in chat? Okay, great. Okay, thanks guys. Excellent. So first question was, what segments of the residential market will be a key focus for you coming out of lockdown? So we've got 51% are saying that we're focusing on high-end architectural single dwelling developments. 41% on that mid-market, again, detached housing, and 34% looking at that economic and social detached housing. Okay, pretty key focus. Medium density, that's that and aged care were actually the highest level of attention. So townhouses and low-rise apartments, look, it's the fastest growing sector of the market, so that makes sense. And then looking at apartments 6 stories, so about half of you looking at that market. Aged care, and a small number are looking at commercial projects. Let's whip down to commercial and then just see office, retail. So we've got education and health, followed by social and community. So that could be things like libraries, museums, could even be bus stations as well, and stadia. Hotels and hospitality, retail and office. Okay. So today, I want to put a particular focus here on the residential market. What this tells me is that majority of you have got a wide spread. So you've actually got solutions for the wider residential market. So it'll be interesting to get your feedback on the on those particular solutions. We're going to talk about the the trend of high hygiene, so where we believe there's opportunities for interiors to become safer environments. So obviously that stands for aged care, but what about for other levels of residential development? And in the commercial space, I want to focus on office, retail, I'm going to focus on office, education, and health. I can't cover everything today, but depending on your feedback, we can go into those other areas. Okay, all right, thanks for that. We'll, good to see your feedback and level of interest there. Okay, great. So again, looking at the market, I just want to comment quickly on what we've seen in terms of guidance from the government over the last 7 days. You know, it's a lot has changed, or has developed, I should say. Starting to see some rhetoric where we've got used to this term of shovel ready, which implies more of an infrastructure focus, to workforce ready. So how can we develop a large number of projects which engages a large number of entities and people within the construction industry? Infrastructure projects is not a good way to do that. So we need to think about how the government is injecting project life into the residential and commercial market. Because they use vastly more trades and subcontractors, so roughly 50% of cost is built around people's time versus 25% in infrastructure. So we engage a whole lot more people if we spend $1 million in residential or commercial construction than we do in infrastructure. We've got to get that balance right. We can assume that we will have a strong infrastructure pipeline. So what are the opportunities for us there? And in terms of vertical construction, which is this term we're hearing a lot of, which really in our minds is commercial construction, we need to be able to, spelling mistake there, identify the government programs and think about how we can keep close to those, because there'll be projects around regional airports, schools, and other social developments. We need to think about what confidence the government is giving developers in proceeding with other commercial projects. And we also need to pivot in thinking about how we can offer solutions in terms of maintenance, because it's growing as a very large part of the market that we need to keep focused on. In terms of government support into residential, we know residential markets are hugely skewed by confidence in house prices. But one thing we're looking for is how is the government driving social housing, and what does that look like? How can they open that up to smaller construction companies rather than giving that to a large number of big companies? Okay, so quickly on infrastructure, roads, bridges, water infrastructure. Question to you, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but are there projects here that could open up opportunities for you if your main market has been either the pure commercial market or residential? It's just something to think about. Most of you have got a large interest in residential market. So let's just recap on where we sit. 2/3 are detached housing. These are building consents for the last 5 years. The largest growth we see is apartments, but mainly in that medium density. So we've got 4 key buckets there. Again, asked you to think about what parts of the residential market that you're focusing in on, and I can see from your poll results that we've got a wide spread. So let's quickly go through that. By region, again, there's a large Auckland story here. We would expect that the market going forward will continue to tell that Auckland story. Regional, we're going to have to be nimble to see how that reacts and what level of government support we get. Seen Shane Jones looking at pro-ratering spend across different regions. Let's see how that plays out. Okay, so residential market makes up 60% of the construction industry. Roughly 50% of the industry is labour costs, and so the more residential projects we get, the more entities we get engaged, the stronger the recovery will be. So we think about detached housing. Three key parts of that market: architectural, the mid-market, and social economic. When we're coming into this, we had roughly 37,000 building consents, looking at the real growth engine coming out of that social and economic housing. Now's the time, if that's a part of the market that you're interested in, is to really think about how you can help deliver those projects, volume projects, with providing a safe and secure supply chain. So I want to talk quickly about merchants. So coming into this, feedback I've had is that merchants were pretty fully stocked post the Chinese New Year. Effectively, they were carrying stock really up until June. So, you know, for most SKUs, they're actually okay. And I've heard from builders that merchants are getting pretty hungry in the market and potentially looking to supply a wider range of projects, not just those deemed absolutely essential by government. But what we do see a weakness in the products that are fabricated locally, and the sentiment that I'm hearing is that we'll see merchants, if they haven't already, start turning to local manufacturers with a rhetoric sounding something like, hey, you know how we used to work together before we moved our supply chain to China? Well, can we do that again? So a sense that there's a reliance that it'll come back to a domestic supply chain where we have some certainty and control. There will be an expectation that there'll be a price increase, and that'll have to be passed on to the builder and to the end user. But again, important time for product suppliers to be thinking about how they can get messages around supply chain confidence, not only to architects and builders, but through to those merchants and distributors, because that'll become an important part of the market going forward. And as we talked about last week, how do we make sure that our supply chain is safe and healthy? So what are we doing to make sure that the sites are staying secure? The mid-market, this has been typically addressed by by architectural designers. Again, probably the most susceptible to a downturn. Has been driven a lot by specs. There's been rumours that government could underwrite spec developers with a buyback for KiwiBuild. Again, we'll hear lots of these schemes being voiced in the media, but that's definitely a key market to watch. Speaking to a few design firms around the country, some of them are expecting that they'll have 50% plus drop off in terms of continuity of projects. So people are not saying let's forget about it, but let's pause and wait and see. The architectural market, I think we always see that market, there's an underlying strength there. Those projects will still continue. They might take a little longer, but there is opportunity to build strong relationships with those specifiers to help influence those projects. Remembering that that's probably about 10% of the total market, residential market, so it could become quite cluttered. So again, need to make sure that we're focused in on the right messaging there. Okay, so moving into medium density, I'm just going to pause for a second. Darren, comment from you. Some merchants got a huge hit of stock before the lockdown, with sales apparently 4 times normal on the days leading up to lockdown, so expecting a huge demand upon or just prior to kickoff. I appreciate those comments, Darren. I'm sure that'll be aligned with some particular SKUs, and I would expect that your staff will be keeping a close watch and keeping an update with your key merchants. So appreciate the question or comment. Sorry. So medium density. So again, we actually have seen medium density growing across most of the cities. It's not just an Auckland story. But again, I think this part of the market that we should expect to continue is that social economic housing, where we've got Housing New Zealand or Kaingaroa will be leading the charge there. So thinking about cost-effective solutions around fire, acoustics, and I think what we should also look for is high hygiene. So what are the things we can bring in, particularly around ventilation, but also self-cleaning surfaces, antibacterial support?
Matt, we've got a raised hand from Andrew, so I'll pass that across to him to ask a question.
Great, okay. Andrew, good afternoon. How are you? Andrew, we'll just unmute you there. Maybe if you can just unmute yourself at your end, we can bring you in. Andrew, once you do that, we can we'll get you going. Okay. Until then, Andrew, I'll keep firing along here. So now looking at the apartment market. So some feedback from banks around that they're really tightening up on lending for new projects, particularly around high density, where there's a large amount of certainty required. And we should expect that this market there'll be some delays, and we should take full advantage of the projects that are underway at the moment. Obviously, if we're in Auckland, we don't have to be reminded of the large number of cranes building apartment blocks at the moment. Okay. I just want to touch on the alterations and additions. And like we saw in the GFC, this actually becomes quite a large part of the industry. So two key factors here. We've all spent time at home, so we've identified areas where we can improve the layout and probably the performance of our house as well. Things like acoustics have been tested, thermal control and ventilation. I've got three boys at home, so that's certainly been interesting for us to cohabitate 24/7. And there's this new concept around the boffice, so the bedroom office. So we should think going forward that the way that we work and a lot of professional services will be spending more time at home. They'll see the advantages. So where we can offer solutions to help with multi-use of rooms and extensions, thinking about where homes can develop high performance. This should be of real interest to us all. So again, a key strategy back into this market, which really haven't seen a lot of focus on the last 5 years. Cool. Now looking at commercial construction. Okay, again, this term vertical construction, it's dominated by private development. We need to think about how the government is supporting, because that's going to put a huge influence on the confidence of the sector going forward. Now, Tony Alexander's got a weekly update. I went through that this morning, and his quote was, the banks, their existing financial discussions with commercial property clients have been placed on hold. Two things. Rental income has taken a hit, and the tenant outlooks have worsened. He's also getting feedback from banks that they have little or no appetite for new property developments. And so, this here, when we're thinking about projects that could well be in the pipeline, maybe they're at concept or initial stages and developed design, just keeping close to the specifiers and thinking, what's the likelihood of those projects proceeding? Again, I mentioned before about the shovel-ready projects. What level of influence are the government having in promoting or bringing forward government commercial buildings, and how can we get access to those? I'll pause there. Does anyone have any comments around the commercial market before I get into the individual sectors? I'll keep an eye out for raised hands, and I'll bring you in at any point. Okay, so now I'd like to just go over a couple of key segments of the commercial market. Went through this last week. Firstly, I want to have a look at education. So building consent value of the last 12 months is $1 billion. So we knew this was a big part of the market. Remember, commercial market's worth $9 billion, so this is a significant part. Now, when we start thinking about new projects versus the maintenance of existing stock, we've got roughly 4 times the value of maintenance to building consent value for the last 12 months. So again, we need to be thinking about whether these buildings are being upgraded because they've just been poorly maintained, whether they've been converted into modern learning environments. I just got children behind me hopping out of the spa pool, so I hope that's not offending anyone there. One of the joys of working from home. So look, a big part of that market is really going to be around how we can bring these buildings up to scratch and really future-proof them. So we'd expect that the government had announced $400 million package into homes for this year as a kind of a pre-budget announcement. We should expect that there to be a much larger investment in bringing the stock up to standard. So with that in mind, we need to think about our solutions around ventilation, thermal performance, durability, but also around health. So yes, ventilation I mentioned, but what can we bring into the performance around health and high hygiene, self-cleaning surfaces, whatever solutions you've got, a big part of the market will be not only new buildings, but bringing old buildings up to scratch. Okay, John, I just can't quite see raised hands, so I'd appreciate you just letting me know if someone's keen to chat. All right, let's get into the health market. So building consent value is around 600 million for the last 12 months. If we look at the total grouping of spend in the health sector, and I've got a shot here of Dunedin Health Care, which is around 600 million. It's estimated between 10 and $14 billion. So it's a long-term program. We've actually got a little bit of a period before Dunedin kicks off. But we should also think that the maintenance projects and bringing our health buildings up to scratch is again worth 4 to 5 billion. These are significant numbers in relationship to the amount of work that we had programmed for this year. Remember, the total market had peaked at $9 billion. So again, what have we got that we can introduce to help bringing these buildings up to scratch? A lot of them will have issues around fire code. We know high hygiene is going to be important. Operating performance, so thinking about what we can do around durability and maintenance costs will all be key factors. So again, big opportunity here. Okay, I've got a question here, more of a statement. Thank you, Richard. I've heard that most Ministry of Education projects have been placed on hold during the Covid-19 lockdown. Yes, Richard had certainly had heard that as well, but we should expect that that'll be one of the first sectors to open up in terms of government support. So watch the space. Thanks for your comment. Okay, finally, I just want to go into office. So again, building consent value for the last 12 months was around $1 billion. So we saw huge demand for growing the amount of office space right across the country. Now we need to think a little bit differently. The big opportunity will be around repurposing and refurbing. Look at this image here, where someone's actually had a call center or a data center. What are the opportunities that they can give staff in terms of working remotely, and they can reduce their rental footprint. We're going to have to think about high hygiene. So workstations that have got good areas of separation. We've got self-cleaning amenities. We probably got more space, so less people in a wider footprint. So what are the opportunities here to provide those healthy environments, thinking about OPEX costs, and also things that can be done quickly. In this market here, potentially quite a bit of work can be done without building consent. So this fits under that workshop ready mentality where we can actually get in and do things quickly. So I'd imagine that a number of you will be thinking about what case studies or examples that we can communicate in EBOSS that talk to a cost-effective and quick refurbishment project and your solution and support to that. Okay, and then just a comment around regions. We should expect again that Auckland will be busy. We can see that Auckland Council are looking at paying forward to any of their current contracts following NZTA. So, they're trying to bring some life back into the centre as soon as we can move out of lockdown. So that'll be interesting to watch if that's followed by other councils. But again, we should expect this to be a national story, not just Auckland. Okay, well, you're very quiet today, so I'm just going to keep on talking. Can I just get some feedback from people? Is this type of information valuable? Should I keep going on this? So if you want to just on the Q&A and chat, just let me know. Okay, so finally just move on and think about preparation. I want to think about restart. So obviously we've got a big announcement on Monday where we'll figure out what the timing is. And the question I posed last week is that we should expect a staged response as we move into level 3. So we need to make sure as individual companies that we're in a good position to restart, and we need to demonstrate to our staff and to our value chain that we have a safe environment and we can support a safe environment. So we should expect that the type of work will be dictated to next on Monday, and we need to hit the ground running. So Darren's commented that, hey, we believe that some merchants will be crying out for stock. Okay, we're aware of that, and that's something that we can preempt. We have got the time now to actually look at our own workplace and make sure that we have got process and procedures in place. There is no specific checklist for this, but again, I sent you that link to WorkSafe last week. I expect all of you to be able to go through that and be able to demonstrate if anyone was to audit you. This is the process that we have in place to ensure that our that our staff are safe and that their family feel that they are safe returning to work. Okay, just thanks for your feedback here, team. Okay, that is good. Okay, comment here from Brian. Interestingly, the government in the last 2 weeks have contacted senior players in infrastructure and asking recommendations on how to ease the RMA with a view to quickening approvals and consents. Brian, great comment. Thank you for that. I'd love to put a poll here together and seeing what level of confidence we'd have that the government could fast track resource consents. Yeah, I'm let's just keep an open let's keep an open ear on that. And again, part of the rationale for doing these lockdown lunches is that I'm expecting to get feedback from the wider EBOSS community that we all can benefit from. So Brian, let's put a watching brief on that. Simon, Matt, any idea about whether construction sites will be able to open if we move to level 3? Simon, great question. Look, there is huge pressure on the government to start opening up construction sites. And again, it's going to come down to building companies demonstrating that what they're doing is deemed essential. And that could well be schoolwork. It could be aged care. This is where, there'll be some lobbying going on. And in some cases, people may well be, just reacting really quickly to government announcements and backing themselves. It's the advice I gave to you all. We should all be ready to hit go as soon as level 3 is announced, because people that are ready, there'll be some advantage there. Simon, whether that relates back to spec builders, we'd have to think that they would be lower priority. But I think there'll be many projects where there'll be main construction companies who have been contacted by government say, yes, we need to actually get this going because it's essential not only in terms of the service we're providing, but actually maintaining and keeping the workforce. Lisa, question from you. Will we be chatting with architects and designers firsthand on the specific solutions they would like from suppliers? Suppliers will now need to be more proactive, but it would be great to understand from architects how this would look like to them. Hey, Lisa, the first thing, so the answer is yes. First thing we want to do in a couple of weeks, actually want to survey them and just have a look at the level of project work they have going forward. We're going to compare that to the work we did last year. So firstly, I just want to get an idea of what they've got on their, in their pipeline. And then secondly, thinking about what support they will need from suppliers and how that has changed. My gut with this is we're going to have to be proactive. If we wait and hear from them, I think we'll wait too long. And that's why I'm trying to share this information here and try and get for you to identify opportunities and get highly effective communication and engagement back out in the market, because we've got to think differently. We can't do it by coming in doing a morning tea. It's hard to do it with scale unless we do it digitally, because otherwise it's one-on-one phone calls or emails. So Alicia, any feedback we get around specifics, we'll let you know. Depending on how we go next week with the announcement on Monday, I'd plan to give you an update from the main architectural companies that we deal with: Jasmax, Ignite, Chow Hill, Warren Amani, Pacific Environments and Context. So I expect to actually have a summary on from them, an overview of how they're working, the type of work they got, and just general feedback to suppliers. So I hope that will be of use to you. Okay, I've got 5 more minutes, a few more questions here. John, there's some comment from a sector of academics this morning asking the government to go straight to level 2. What are the panel's thoughts? Okay, John, can we just whip up a poll on that? The question is, what do we think the chances are of the government going straight from level 4 to level 2? And let's see what people think. So thanks for that, John. Cool. Okay. Right. Okay. So back to restart. So just a recap on what we've learned from the essential services. So you guys need to make sure that you're ready. You need to back your business, that you guys have solutions for the government projects that we believe are going to come online. And I've talked today about education, and we should expect some other government commercial infrastructure. We should be thinking about social housing as well. We should expect that there'll be a level of self-audit and potentially some random audits as well to make sure that your place of work is safe and that you are you're providing a healthy supply chain. Remember what we said last week? We should expect builders to be operating in their own bubble. So what are your site or installation instructions for how people can handle your product by keeping a 2-meter separation and or less than 15 minutes in close contact? Should you have product weight on your packaging now? Anything over 20 kilos is considered heavy and would require 2 people. So what level of confidence can you provide people on site to actually handle your product in a safe way? How are you offering technical support? You know, do you need to provide a little on-site manual just with the quick tips or quick links or even phone numbers for people to call if they've got any questions? You know, I think we need to, we've relied on going to site and building relationships, you know, next to the builder. We've got a choice of either yelling at them from the edge of the site or being able to provide, you know, the information digitally or over the phone. You know, if we expect that level 3 is staged, there's still going to be, you know, let's say hundreds of projects which will be restarting quickly. We would imagine 2 or 3 days of that restart will be builders doing an audit and bringing their site up to scratch. And then from that, they'll be thinking about getting product to site. So how can you help enable that? Okay, that is all from me today. John, did we, okay, alert level change. Cool, so we'll just put that now. Yeah, good, thanks, John. Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Yep. So, you know, some sad news overnight with 4 deaths. You know, 3 of them linked to Rosewood, which is obviously very, very sad. The flip side is we've got, you know, under 20 new cases. So, and it seems like the clusters are getting smaller. The new clusters are getting smaller in number, or not growing as quickly, which is positive. But if I can just, I'm just going to end the poll here. I just want to make sure that we finish on time. I'll just share the results with you now. Okay, so we can see that majority think that the next step will be level 3, and if not, then retaining level 4 for a continued period of time. You know what? You know, the latest. Like there's quite a few experts out in the market, but you know, the thinking was if we could, you know, level 3 will be at least a month, if not longer, and you know, we should expect that whatever we're doing now, we need to be servicing builders and architects differently. Digital is going to be a big part of that, and thinking about how we provide the right level of support. Because, you know, thinking about architects at the moment, the feedback is we're not calling people because we don't have enough confidence of our surroundings because we're sharing it with other people. So they're preferring email at the moment, and you know that's something we'll have to get used to. We need to be more proactive in pushing content out in the market. You know, for all of you, let's use EBOSS now and Detailed in our EDMs to get content out. We're about to create a video presentation service, so 4 or 5 minute technical overviews of product. So again, you can push that out to a wide market just to think about how we can operate at scale. Cool. I've got a question from Andy, how many people are participating in these webinars? We had 178 registrations for today, Andy. So that kind of gives you an idea of the audience here. Okay, so for next week, what are we looking at? Well, I'm teeing up a bit of a Q&A session. So on Thursday, Grant Robertson, we've got update on sort of the approach to business and further support packages the government are bringing out. And then on Monday, we'll have an announcement around how we move out of lockdown, what timing looks like. So on Tuesday afternoon, I will have a Q&A, just speaking to a couple of people, trying to figure out who's going to give us the best insights in terms of us as a product supplier industry group on what those changes or what their timing means for us. So that'll be about half an hour. And if we've got time after that, I want to start thinking about how we can improve the efficacy. Yeah, I think that's right. So I've been doing quite a bit of talking on our specification reps. So I want us to think about what should we be doing as spec reps, and again, building a real level of focus and targeting the type of work that we feel most confident in gaining. So again, the last sort of 7 years, I've seen reps moved more towards a reactionary state, and so that they have been making opportunities out of the projects that come to them. We are going to need to be a lot more proactive going forward. I think it's the opportunity for us all, and I just want to take you through some thinking on how we could, be quick to pivot with that. Okay. Thank you for your attendance. I am keen on engagement going forward. I'd like this to become more of a forum than just me. I think we're probably all suffering from a little bit of webinar fatigue. So I look forward to a little bit more engagement next week. In the meantime, just any questions or comments around how I can improve the service, please let me know. Otherwise, have a healthy and safe week. And I'm just going to launch a final poll here. Just want you guys to rate the level of today's presentation, and always appreciate your feedback. So have a good afternoon. Thank you again for your attendance. See you next time.